Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Laura Friedman Shedlove, she, her, hers, or they, them, theirs pronouns. I'm a member of this year's Forum Committee, and I have the pleasure to welcome you to this year's BitCurator Forum. We're very glad you could join us and very excited about our program for the day. We will be starting with our keynote talk in just a couple of minutes. But please do take a look at our code of conduct. The code of conduct monitor will introduce themselves at the beginning of each session, and each session will also have a moderator and someone to help manage Q&A. Elena Colon Marrero is our monitor for the first part of the day, and I believe has posted the information about the code of conduct into the chat. A few additional logistics before we get started. There is a shared Google document for notes, so please add your notes there throughout the day. And I believe that link is also getting pasted into the chat for your access. For the majority of the day, we will be using the Zoom webinar format, so attendees will not be able to unmute. However, we hope that you'll be able to use the chat. I'm not 100% sure if that's working for everyone yet, and you definitely should have access to the Q&A function. If you have questions specifically for any of our presenters, please do make sure to use the Q&A feature rather than the chat for that, so that we can keep track of those questions. And feel free to drop your questions in there as and when they come to you. You can choose to pose a question anonymously if you prefer. For the Great Question session later this afternoon, we will be switching to a Zoom meeting format that allows more interactivity. The link for that session should have been sent to you in the email that all registrants received, and we'll also paste it into the chat for you to save for later, and we'll share it multiple times. And there will also be information about how to ask a question in the Great Question session. There's a guide for how to do that. Also want to mention that with the exception of the very first lightning session presentation today and any breakout rooms later in the afternoon, everything that's happening will be recorded and made available after the forum. So if you miss anything or want to review anything, that should be available. And now I'm going to pass the mic to my fellow Forum Committee member, Kari Smith, who will be introducing today's keynote speaker.
Great, thank you very much. We have a fantastic, sorry, I'm just trying to forward my slide here. A fantastic keynote speaker today. Tess Greinoch will be presenting System Reboot, a rapid response and the power of grassroots data rescue. So I'm Kari Smith, she, her pronouns, and as Laura just said, part of this year's Forum Committee, and I do have the pleasure to be moderating this session today. I'll be the slide wrangler, and I'll handle the Q&A for the keynote session here. Okay. The shared notes, again, there's a bit.ly for those, and you'll be able to work on those. If you have any questions on that, again, you can add a question to the chat and someone will help you out with that. Ms. Greinoch is one of the co-founders and the steering committee for, sorry, I have this thing to share here and I can't get to it. Sorry, I'll start again. Ms. Greinoch is one of the co-founders and steering committee meetings for the Data Rescue Project and the manager of research services at Brandeis University Library. She holds a Master of Library and Information Studies from Dalhousie University and received a Bachelor of Science from the University of Alberta. She's finishing her term as past president of the Research Data Access and Preservation Association, RDAP, this month. They are one of the three founding organizations of the Data Rescue Project. When she needs to hit reset, you can find Tess pottering in a garden, exploring a new trail with her dog, or curled up with a good book. Let's welcome Tess Greinoch for her keynote. Thank you very much, Tess.
Thank you so much. And if I could just get a confirmation that you're seeing my screen okay. Yep, great, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak and open this exciting day of presentations. My name is Tess Granack, and as was mentioned, I'm one of the founding members and I'm part of the steering committee for the Data Rescue Project. And during my talk today, I will be giving a short history of the Data Rescue Project, our current initiatives, and where we're going. I'm also going to be dropping some links into the chat for some of the resources I will be mentioning, and the slides will also be shared. I'm not sure if they'll be shared soon after the forum. So stay tuned for those if you're wanting a copy. So just a quick show of hands, if you want to use the raise hand feature or in the chat, how many people have heard or are familiar with the Data Rescue Project already? All right, I'm seeing lots of hands go up. A few hands. All right. So I'm seeing like about 10% of all total attendees. So maybe it sounds like there's a few of you that might be new to the Data Rescue Project. Feel free to lower your hands. And so if you are new to the Data Rescue Project, we are a grassroots volunteer community dedicated to the access to public data for the public good. We enable rapid response efforts for at-risk public data grounded in the recognized data stewardship principles. We partner with allied communities of data creators, carers, and their organizations to advocate for sustainable data access. And to understand our story, we need to go back to some of the predecessors that we drew inspiration from. Government information has long been vulnerable. For example, a fire at the Department of Commerce in 1921 destroyed records from the 1890 census. In the digital era, efforts like the Internet Archive began trying to preserve ephemeral government content. In 2008, the Internet Archive helped launch the end-of-term web archive in response to changes during presidential transitions. It recognized the fragility of federal web content and gave us an early blueprint for how to act at scale. Later, there was a growing recognition of the importance and unique preservation needs of public data collected by government agencies. Data rescue efforts saw an initial surge in 2016, 2017 with projects such as Data Refuge, which was launched by faculty and staff at the University of Pennsylvania in response to growing concerns over environmental and climate data. This project helped to catalyze what became the first data rescue movement. Also started in 2016, the Environmental Data and Governance Initiative, or EDGI, has become the leading watchdog group tracking and assessing modifications to federal environmental information resources and their accessibility, including data. In 2024, they launched the Public Environmental Data Partners, or PEDP, which focus on documenting and protecting environmental and climate data tools. The final 2017 influential project I will mention is the preservation of electronic government information, which brought together a community of organizations all working towards the preservation of government information. Now bringing us to February 2025. The Data Rescue Project began as a collaboration between the International Association for Social Science Information Service and Technology, or IASSIST, the Data Curation Network, or DCN, and the aforementioned Research Data Access and Preservation Association, or RDAP, which is the organization I am the representative for. Our organizations had been receiving questions from members about how to get involved with data rescue efforts as early as November 2024. Following President Trump's inauguration in January 2025, his administration quickly began to remove data and change how data was collected when the data did not support their priorities. This was a much faster process than Trump's first term. Therefore, the data rescue efforts needed to respond on the same time scale, quickly. To give you a sense of the speed with which this came together, our community began capturing at-risk datasets, resources for data rescue, and related efforts on February 3rd. 2 days later, we formalized the Data Rescue Project, launching a Blue Sky account to communicate with those interested in the project. And this was closely followed by the launch of our data inventory and data rescue workflow, then the launch of our website and internal communication platform, Mattermost. We were very fortunate to be able to draw on the history and the expertise from existing and former data rescue and information rescue efforts, such as the aforementioned EDGI, which had an existing data rescue initiative in PEDP with a focus on environmental and climate data. And we knew we wanted to expand that focus beyond that narrow segment of data. And Peggy, which had several contacts across the government information preservation landscape that we could draw upon for their expertise. We also had a lot of support and advice from Sebastian and other members of the Saving Ukrainian Cultural Heritage Online, or SUCHO initiative, which had launched on March 1st, 2022, in response to the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. He brought in technical expertise in open source tools and fundraising. A few other things. Because existing efforts were already underway, one of our initial goals was to coordinate with existing efforts so we could complement what was being done rather than duplicate it. Our second goal was communication. Because of the large networks in our 3 organizations, we amplified support for ongoing efforts. And we also wanted to rescue data ourselves, and because of our background in data management, we wanted to develop a thoughtful and sustainable workflow to conserve and curate the data to account for the additional documentation and context required for data sets. So what have we accomplished thus far? So far, we have enabled the rescue of more than 2,000 datasets, covering more than 80 at-risk government offices, which totals hundreds of terabytes of mirrored data. And the most important stat is that we are a community of more than 500 volunteers. From the earliest digital preservation efforts by Internet Archive in 2008, we would not be able to accomplish these large-scale projects without all the volunteers who contribute their time and expertise. Volunteers for the Data Rescue Project have done a legion of different tasks. On top of rescuing data and adding metadata, volunteers have developed scripts for harvesting the data, created a user interface to improve the search experience, written blog posts, organized events, among other roles. In the early days, to keep track of all the data rescue efforts and resources, we were trying to keep a Google Doc up to date, which became rather slow with the number of people that were visiting it. And we were really happy when we launched our website. I'll go ahead and drop that link in the chat. And the website had the same information, which made the editing and viewing of the resources much easier. To coordinate with our 500 plus volunteers, we use Mattermost, which is an open source asynchronous communication tool similar to Slack and Discord. This allows volunteers to request help with data upload, storage, and reference, indicate datasets and funding agencies that need urgent assistance, share resources, news, frustrations, hopes, and we share a lot of pictures of our pets and pictures of ducks. So stress relief is also important. And it's the main channel for steering committee coordination outside of our weekly standing meetings. With so many volunteers, one of the keys to getting so many data sets mirrored was a clear workflow, and we keep track of data sets nominated for rescue and which data sets are being worked on through the data inventory spreadsheet pictured here. A lot of the rescue data is added to Data Lumos. which is an archive hosted by ICPSR for government data resources, and over 3,500 data sets have been uploaded with metadata thus far. And within the first year, by January 2026, we already had over 13,000 downloads. The speed of which the downloads have accumulated, I think, speaks to the importance of this public data and why it needs to be preserved. Now, just another quick break, show of hands or show of emojis in the chat. How many people have visited Data Lumos before today? Okay, only a few people. And I would encourage you to go check it out, whether you follow the link here or in the slides later. You'll find a lot of great data available there. And I mentioned that one of the data rescue project goals was to coordinate with other data rescue efforts. And we sought to create a central location to find all the rescue data. We initially were doing this through the data rescue tracker in the open source base row of software, but it was not easy to search. It did not have the friendliest interface. And thus, the Data Rescue Project portal was launched in June 2025 and currently has 2,974 datasets across 97 government offices. We continue to use the structured tables in base row to feed into the portal, so if you prefer the spreadsheet view, that is also available. And I'll drop that portal link in the chat as well. And I'll just add that the main distinction between the portal and Data Lumos is that the portal contains all the data sets that have been uploaded to Data Lumos, as well as others that are located in other repositories through our other partners. So most of the steering committee are librarians who enjoy teaching people about data. And we knew from early on that to get the most volunteers on board, we would not be able to do all the training ourselves and would need to enlist the support of other educators. So to make this process easy as possible, we put together a data rescue event toolkit with resources for educators to bring the data rescue into their classrooms, schools, and libraries. If you're interested in holding your own data rescue event, the toolkit includes templates to promote, organize, and run the event, such as presentation slide deck and sample social media posts. And if you are holding a data rescue event, feel free to reach out for support and let us know how it goes. The Data Rescue Project's goal of communication includes getting the word out about data rescue efforts through our active blog and Blue Sky accounts. One of our favorite things to share is data user stories. People using the rescued or at-risk government data. If you have a story or know someone with a story on how they're using at-risk or rescued government data, we'd love to hear it. Please reach out using our story form. The blog is also another way for us to feature data rescue work happening in other organizations, and we often have guest authors. You can stay up to date by subscribing on the website. One example of how the data rescued through the Data Rescue Project is being used is the Highfeld Next project from EDGI's PEDP, which provides an interactive catalog of public GIS data from the Homeland Infrastructure Foundation level data, or Highfeld Open Data. And it has both a searchable catalog and this interactive mapping feature, which I have on the screen, and includes mapping coordinates for critical infrastructure such as power substations, nursing homes, and water treatment plants, which are used by officials for disaster planning. We've continued to support and collaborate with other efforts, especially when we are asked to save non-data electronic materials that are better fit for end-of-term archive, for example. I've already mentioned EDGI and ICPSR. A couple of other projects that we've been collaborating with are Harvard's Library Information Innovation Lab, which has been working on some large data rescue projects, and BitCurator, which focuses on web archiving. One of our biggest collaborations has been Save Our Signs. The partnership between the University of Minnesota and Safeguarding Research and Culture managed to gather more than 10,000 photos from around the country. They're still accepting photos, so if you have any that you would like to add, please visit saveoursigns.org. After a year of rescuing data, the steering committee met to discuss next steps, and we knew it was time to reset our focus on long-term sustainability for data rescue efforts and supporting the data rescued so far. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about what we're working on now and what will be coming in the near future. One of the outputs we are working on is a data rescue toolkit to guide future data rescue efforts. We love a toolkit. The early days of data rescue were very hectic and stressful, and we hope this resource will allow future large-scale data rescue efforts in the United States and elsewhere to hit the ground running with hopefully a little less stress. The toolkit enables us to move some of the documentation that currently lives on our website to the toolkit as well. One of the key features of this toolkit is that we want it to be crowdsourced and community-driven, which is why, as we are building it, we're holding workshops at various conferences, such as iAssist a couple of weeks ago, to gather input. As of right now, there are 9 main sections of the toolkit, ranging from themes related to initial coordination, funding advice, workflows and processes, events and hackathons, volunteer engagement, communications, existing tools and resources, and a community directory. The existing tools and resources, as well as community directory sections, are what currently live under current efforts and resources on our website. Once the toolkit is up and running, we will officially migrate those website pages to this directory. The other 7 sections are intended to be populated with a variety of different materials. This includes spaces for members of the Data Rescue Project Steering Committee to offer reflections, advice, and linked resources and individuals we found useful as we established this organization. It also includes spaces for us to detail our in-house workflows, processes, and documentation, such as our Data Lumos workflow, our tracker user guide, and steps for triaging data. We have sections for reviewing lessons learned, specifically under volunteer engagement and communications, as well as hackathon instructions and setups we found successful, community engagement strategies and tactics, communications and project management templates, and more. We're also taking a critical look at our workflows. Our current data inventory Google Sheet has 40 tabs. Yes, 40 tabs, and no standard terms or data validation, which I'm sure you are all cringing with me right now. But this was great when we needed many people to access and make edits quickly, but as you may have guessed, is now causing issues when we want to add these data sets and their metadata to the portal or to Data Lumos due to the extra work required to crosswalk to the underlying structured tables in base row. So we would like to update our workflow to have information currently being entered in the tracker be directly input into base row for easier inclusion in the portal and provide greater standardization. We would also like to add a new field in the portal to share the status of the data and note if it's still being updated on the government website or if variables have changed. A few different groups have been tracking some of the data sets, including Data Index and America's Essential Data. So it would be great to link to and highlight their work. We'd also like to link to existing data standards, such as persistent identifiers. So we'll be exploring incorporating research organization registry or ROR IDs and other identifiers into the portal over the next year. Another important goal that came out of our strategic reset was continuing to prioritize the well-being of the steering committee and volunteers. As a volunteer-run organization, our strongest asset is people. As such, we take breaks. This past winter, the steering committee had a winter rest over the new year and also encouraged our volunteers to recharge. We also take breaks in smaller ways. For example, during the summer, we're reducing our very active Blue Sky account. As a steering committee, we give each other grace when our day jobs get busy or life happens. Over this past year and a half, steering committee members have started new jobs, moved to new cities, traveled for work, and had family commitments which required us to be flexible and accommodating. What has kept us connected through it all is open communication, supporting each other, letting each other know when we need to take a step back or have time to spare, and celebrating our accomplishments. If you've been inspired by this talk today and would like to get involved, you can share our resources and projects with your professional and personal circles. I've dropped a number of links in the chat, and as a reminder, these slides will also be shared. If you are interested in rescuing data identified in our data inventory or adding rescue data to our tracker, we'll be reopening our volunteer recruitment soon on a new platform. Sign up for our mailing list on the website to stay in the know, or follow us on Blue Sky. Or you can email us if you would like to get involved sooner. If you're able, you can also contribute financially. If you have any questions after today, please reach out to us at datarescueproject@protonmail.com. And whether it's a consortium or a data rescue effort, people are our greatest asset. And by supporting the community's well-being, we can achieve more and go farther together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tess. Round of applause. I like clapping when we can. That was fabulous. When I saw that you would be doing this keynote, I was really interested in all the organizations that you've managed to bring together, and especially the very long established data archives such as ICPSR. And so I guess that's one question that I had. I wanted to just kind of follow up on a little bit is when you were talking about bringing in the Ukrainian rescue group and that they were able to help with fundraising. I was sort of curious about how did that look and what has it taken to really move forward with this as a collaborative project in terms of kind of that funding and underscoring that, given you have also sort of well-established organizations that are participating in this.
Sure. I think one of the clear things is that we draw really clear boundaries between the different projects that we're working on. And I think the biggest help that Sebastian and other members of the steering committee brought from other projects that they were previously on is connections for the fundraising component. So people that they've previously reached out to with help with grant writing, with help with getting connected to funders. So that was the main thing for helping with funding, as well as getting us, Sebastian also put us in contact with our fiscal sponsor, the Open Collective Europe, which was a big help because for anybody that has had to deal with funding for any nonprofit venture knows that you have to store that money somewhere. And so it's really important to have a good fiscal sponsor to be able to help you manage that and do that administrative work.
Thank you. Another question that I have is when I think in the United States, when we've been thinking about like the Ended archives and some of these other early data rescue projects, it seems like it's kind of very U.S. centric to us.
Mhm.
But given that you're just talking about that we've got international projects as well, how did you find kind of how early other people were also looking to try and save data sets and data that's been online with other governments? I mean, we know the Ukrainian one for sure, but kind of other countries that are have also been participating in this kind of work.
Hmm. Um, I can't speak to a deep historical knowledge outside of those projects that I mentioned earlier. Um, and I know this was still U.S. um, but we've de still US centric. Um, but when we've experienced uh, other natural disasters, like hurricanes that have gone through Puerto Rico, um, and the importance of having that saved public data to be able to support disaster relief efforts has been really crucial. And having an international support for that has been very important because keeping the data stored locally for about a location that location does leave it at risk to uh, to those natural disasters, which we are seeing more often. And I was not surprised that when the data rescue project started that we were seeing a lot of international interest in supporting data rescue efforts. Um, and it's interesting to note that the data that is being preserved by our efforts that was collected by the federal government not only has to deal with not only interested or has data about the US. It also we're also preserving USAID data that has a lot of data that they collected from all their projects from around the world. And so there's a lot of interest from, I was collaborating on a USAID data rescue hackathon with colleagues in Africa. So that was a really cool experience and um, getting to work with them and see that. And I think, especially also for data that really doesn't knows no borders, like climate, environmental data, weather systems don't understand political boundaries. And migration patterns of animals, they don't see a political border. Um, they cross it back and forth every day.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Another question that's come in is, could you speak a little bit more about the kinds of challenges that you've been encountering with the data itself? So things like unusual formats or other issues, documentation types of things.
Yeah, so some of the different issues that we've had to deal with, one of them is size for some of the data. So just the like how big the data set is. Luckily, we have some very experienced coders that are able to create some scripts for us and be able to store that locally before we can upload it into some our larger cloud storage that we were able to get once we had some funding for that. And as well as some of the you all might be already aware of this, but some government websites are not structured well for easy download of of information, including data. And so some data rescue has involved more laborious efforts or more people to be able to download individual data sets to have the full picture. We weren't able to automate it for whatever one reason or another. And as you mentioned, documentation. So we were so lucky to have all these volunteers, but everybody comes with different levels of uh, metadata and data literacy understanding. So when and during the training, we try and share as much of that as possible about the importance of documentation and the metadata that they find with the data. But sometimes, when things get uploaded to our tracker, some of those pieces are missing, and especially with this at-risk data, uh, the next time that we go try and find it, it might be gone. And so trying to find that documentation or even like a website that it was on um, uh, might not be possible.
So is DDI, so that's the Documentation Initiative kind of standard for documentation and data. Is that well spread, or kind of, I guess what I'm hearing is that some data is just, here's all of our data, and then there might separately be information that's kind of behind it that would be really the documentation. So some of it you're trying to just pull down, like you said, kind of metadata or other things that people are able to include. Is the DDI method well, because I'm just thinking that's sort of the biggest reuse format for documentation. Is that something that you guys are seeing, or can you train people on that? No, okay. I would say that's pretty specific, but yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah. And
Good.
I don't think it's very widespread, and at least in the data that we're working with, and the especially initially, we're really focused on the immediacy of getting as much of this data preserved as fast as possible,
Right.
and less about the metadata and documentation. And now we're sort of going back and trying to improve that to uh, make it better.
Yeah. Sorry. One of our program committee meeting members also had a couple questions. So given what you were just saying, that often it's the data and then later you're kind of hoping that you can get the metadata and information about it. Are there concerns around the PII, so publicly personal information, or other kind of inappropriate content in it? And what sort of procedures and maybe tools are you using to be able to help screen that type of stuff? Are you? Can you?
Yeah. So yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So we're very lucky that the majority of the data that we're rescuing is already public data that is posted on government websites. So the assumption is that the government agency did their due diligence to already check for PII data. I will say that some of the data that we have now archived from USAID, for example, was data that was going to be put online and was part of a database uh, building project, but was not published at that point, but had already gone through the step of PII. But we were working with former USAID colleagues to check they were doing the checking of the data to make sure that it was safe.
Yeah, that's great. That's, I mean, it's a huge issue. And thinking about like a bunch of the kind of the forensic tools and things that people are using when they're, looking at content that they're, we're sort of not grabbing, but in a way pulling off of, drives or websites or things. That's, one
Right.
of the issues, right? Is how do you do that scale? So that's great that you have other colleagues that are able to kind of, either they've already done that for you, or that's something that they're able to do in concert with you. I'm just going to put out a call again for if there's any questions in the Q&A or in the chat, to go ahead and please add those. Okay, I've got one more question here. What are your main concerns about technical feasibility issues? So you've mentioned like you were able to do more data because you were able to get funding to have larger kind of cloud storage. But what types of technical feasibility issues? So size, formats, storage areas, kinds of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern is about the size of data and the amount of storage that we're currently using, and the sort of feasibility of maintaining this long term. Um, Even though the data storage is becoming uh, cheaper over time. Data sets are getting larger. So the question is if we would um, could continue to mirror as many public data sets as possible, or continue focusing on at-risk ones, uh, and how that would work.
And that kind of leads me into thinking about long-term preservation. So you have all these things up. I imagine they're being backed up, but are you guys running sort of any preservation actions on the content as well?
Um,
So I would
what
think,
swipe by
yeah,
preservation actions, could you please
yeah, sure.
elaborate?
So things like running uh, fixity checking kind of
Mm,
on things, running, being able to kind of get a sense of what are the sizes, formats, content around the sort of administration. How did you get it? That kind of administrative data that really can
mm,
help within that sort of long-term things. And then a question is like, so for ICPSR, they would be doing it for their data. Um, uh, uh, but the other kinds of content that you might be kind of pulling off in general, is that kind of already in the plan? I know you guys have been sort of working together for like 1 year, but I'm just curious
right,
about the established centers I know would be doing it. And so I'm kind of more curious
right.
about the other things that have come up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would have to check with the ICPSR to see if they are, because as I mentioned, we like to think of ourselves as like a central hub,
Hmm.
and ICPSR has been kind to provide the repository space
Gotcha.
for Data Lumos, and so,
Okay.
but I think that um, it's something for us to look into, especially as there's interest, as I mentioned, of going back to see how many of these data sets
Yeah.
are no longer available. Are they still being updated? Are they are variables changed? And that's like another big sort of, I think, volunteer project that we're uh, probably gonna do maybe some more hackathons about. Um, and so something to look into. Uh, as part of the Data Lumos upload form, there is um, a field for people that are submitting to provide an email for contact so
Okay.
that ICPSR does keep track of like where it's coming from. And they do like to we do encourage our volunteers, like if they are doing it as part of the data rescue project, to indicate that that's where it's coming from so that we can uh, have that information.
Great. So ICPSR right now is sort of holding your stuff. What is the kind of opinion about or strategy for thinking about eventually being able to give this content to somewhere for sort of long-term stewardship access and things? And one of the questions that came in was, is like NARA or Smithsonian, or you guys, or is it kind of the whole point is to keep it away from government agencies to be independent because of the issues around um, things being taken down or access being
Right.
denied?
Yeah, the goal is to try and remain independent. Uh, we've taken steps to things like making sure that we have servers in other countries,
Hmm.
um, and to that extent.
Yeah, I was seeing you're using Proton Mail, and so
Yeah.
I was like, all right, okay, that's great. And then another question was, have you found that you need legal support for any of your project activity, or have you proactively solicited legal advice in case of litigious reaction from government agencies?
So far, we've been very lucky that we haven't had any legal action against us thus far. We did seek legal guidance, especially when we were setting up for things like contracts with funders and as well with our fiscal sponsor, just to make sure that we're not getting tying ourselves into any clauses that we don't want. Um, yeah, we've been very lucky to have those connections as well
Mhm.
through previous projects and connections from through our steering committee.
Yeah, and so things like the data protection laws. So the U.S. we don't really have those, but then if content's being held abroad, or you have content like from Ukraine or other countries that is being held in the States. Is that something that you're having to navigate,
Hmm.
or again, kind of public? It still, might matter. Is that just curious myself?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if that's something that we have encountered yet.
Hmm.
Um, because I'm not sure if there's any like data having been collected from the EU or like if there was EU collected data, if it was, sort of grandfathered into the GDPR
Yeah,
rules.
yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. I'm gonna see if we got any more questions for you. Do you have other things that now that you've had some questions asked and you've gone through your presentation to the kind of reiterate or say in addition to what you've already told us?
I'm curious if there is anything from attendees, if there is anything that you thought could apply to your own work
Mm,
in sort of digital archiving. I'm not sure how many of you work with data or if it's primarily non-data materials. And I wasn't sure. I know there's an interest in open source tools. If anybody had used Base Row before or other open source tools, similar open source tools.
yeah, let's see if we get any response back on that question. Um, yeah, I was curious about that. And that the first tool you just mentioned, where did that one come from? Was that the
Base Row?
Ukrainian project? Yeah.
Yeah, so they had experience with Base Row before, and one of our other steering committee members had used it, so had played around with it a little bit. So there's general consensus to pick it up.
Okay. Cool. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so let me. So we do have this collaborative notes document, and let me just see if we have. Uh, okay. So right now we've just kind of adding in the links that you had matter most. The issue, the fact that that's available, and then the link to submit data stories on there. Okay. Great. Um, Well, we're almost at time. So how about we just again thank you so much for opening the forum this year and telling us all about these projects. I know everyone's always interested in what's happening, but then also kind of how is it happening? And so we really appreciate you sharing all the resources that you guys have used and really thank you very much for doing the work and also for agreeing to be our keynote speaker today. We really appreciate it, Tess.
Thank you so much for having me, and hope everybody has a great day of presentations. I was very excited to see the agenda for today. And if anybody has any questions after the session, feel free to reach out to the Data Rescue Project, or you can reach out to me directly. I'll drop my email in the chat as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay.